Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek here, and today we find ourselves as scientists, moving around the hills, mountains, rainforests, swamps, and towns, trying to locate one of the many lost species. The Search for Lost Species is the sequel to the smash hit and my favorite deduction game of all time, The Search for Planet X. Now it's a game about real-world research, and it's for 1 to 4 players, takes 60 to 75 minutes to play, it's for ages 14 and up, and published by Renegade Game Studios. Today, we'll be doing a rule school where I'll teach you how to set up and play the game so that you don't have to read the rulebook yourself. Now I've placed timestamps below me in the description of this video, just in case you want to jump to a specific section of the rules. Let's get started. The Search for Lost Species is a 1 to 4 player deduction game where each game you're going to be searching for one of these lost species, each with a different logic rule, keeping every game fresh and different. You'll be surveying by boat on the coastal regions, or by foot going around mountains because they block adjacency, or moving to a town, giving you help from the locals, sometimes giving you an immediate ability, end-game scoring, or a one-time ability, or sometimes even ongoing abilities. You'll be tracking all this information on a note sheet behind your player shield, keeping everything secret. And you'll be learning things secretly from a free companion app that makes sure that you never get an incorrect answer. Over the course of the game, you'll be placing sightings that you hope to be correct, because later on, if they prove to be, you'll get points for this at the end of the game, and if you're the first one to do it, you'll be getting bonus points. Each area has either one animal in it, or it's truly empty. Animals have specific logic rules which help you deduce where the lost species is. In every game, there's different research for unlimited replayability, and you're trying to get the most points by finding a lost species and confirming sightings, and not always the first player to do it will win. To set up, you're first going to place the board in the middle of the table. For your first game, make sure you're using this island that's long and narrow, and it also has a sun in the middle of the compass in the upper left-hand part of the board. Next, you'll decide which lost species you're looking for. The lost species deck looks like this, has a question mark on it, just like it does on the board, and you can select one and place it there, or you can randomly do that. Now this will give you a different logic rule for the species that you're looking for this game. For example, for the owl, it is not across a mountain from any lorry. We'll talk about what that means later. Next, on the lower right-hand side of the board, you'll see the town. Now there's a town deck that matches what this looks like. You're going to shuffle this deck up. You're then going to place 4 cards face up here and leaving the deck right there. On the board, you're then going to place some mountains. You'll see that there is some here, here, and here depicted on the board, and you'll place the wooden pieces that match that. And what this does is it blocks adjacency from through a mountain like that. And on the upper side of the board, you'll see some there as well. And again, you'll place the pieces as that board depicted. Next, in the boat, you're going to place tokens and you're going to match them depending on the shape and place those corresponding shapes in those spots of the boat, and it doesn't matter which sides are up on the tokens. In the upper left of the board, you'll see a start spot. A few spots later, you'll see a wood grain spot. You're going to place the brown expedition leader token on that first wood spot facing in the direction of the arrows. Each player will then select a color to play, and they'll take all the components of that color. They'll take one of their scientists and place them on the start spot in a line in random order. Next, everyone's going to get a note sheet, and it's going to be specific to where you're sitting at the table. Right now, we are sitting south of the board, because we're looking at it this way. We are south of the board. So we are going to take a sheet that says south on it. You also want to make sure that you're using the correct island, the shape of the island, and of course it always has that sun in the compass there. Now, if you were sitting like this on the east side of the board, you would take a note sheet that had east in the upper left, because remember, now this island looks just like it does from your vantage point. Next, each player will get a player shield of the color that they chose of their component and scientist, and they're also going to take their town token, camera trap, lorry diamond token, and all their sighting tokens and place them behind their shield as well. For the sighting tokens, you can place them face down to make sure no one else can see that if they get up and move around, or you can place them face up if you're comfortable with that. Each player will need something to write with. I recommend a pencil because you might be erasing, but those do not come with the game, and you'll write your name at the top of your sheet. The next thing you'll do is download the free companion app on the operating system's app store that you're using. Now, one player needs to have it, but all players can have it because if only one player has it, you'll be passing that device around the table during turns. So it's best if all players download it. You do need an internet connection to download the app, but you do not need one to play the game. So you'll download the free app and then you'll open it. Then make sure that you select the animal or the lost species that you're looking for. So here, again, we had selected the owl, so you would select that. Otherwise, you can hit the arrows and you can select a different one if you want to, but this is how you can select it in the app. So hit select. Now you have an easier game or a harder game. We're using the side of the island. It's the easier game for your first game. Notice it has the sun icon next to the easier game. Also notice that it has the enter code there towards the bottom. We'll get to that in just a moment. So one player will first hit start easier game, and then it is going to give you a game code, C8Y4. Now I just talked about before in that main menu where it said enter game code, all other players that are playing that have downloaded the app to their device, that want to use their own device, will then hit that, and then they will put in that code, so then everyone is playing the same exact game. Now once you hit continue, it'll ask you which side of the island or board are you facing. So we are on the south, if you remember, so you'd select that. But if you were on the east, like the other one I had selected, you would select it like that. And again, in the app, it shows you the island and the compass to make sure you're sitting at the right spot. And then you click continue, and you select a difficulty level. The rules state that if you've never played before, you can select beginner. There's nothing wrong with selecting novice. However, it's important that you can play with different levels, meaning if you're playing with a child and you're an adult, you could select maybe experienced, and they might select novice or beginner. You can change different levels as long as everyone is in agreement with who's playing at what level. Most of the time you're going to play at the same level, but you select a level, like let's say, for example, beginner. It'll tell you how many facts, 8 facts. I'm going to click continue, and it is going to show me some facts. Now these are going to be different for everybody, and so now we see here from the app what we are going to notate on our board. Now notice I placed this game code here because if my device malfunctioned or rebooted or something, I could put that code back in and be right back into the game. Notice that I wrote in the logic rule for the lost species, the owl, here as well. So now here we see what the app was telling us to do. Now this is giving us those starting facts. And so, for example, it says on number 3, there's no toad. Each of the island spots are numbered. You'll see number 3, it said no toad, so I crossed that out. I like to actually color in the ones from the beginning of the game that I know for a fact that these are true. And then later on, as I deduce things, I put X's because those are easier to erase, and these ones tell me that these are for sure correct. So you go through for each of the clues that you see there on the app, you're going to go through and cross out that specific animal on that specific number. A very important concept of the game is that every area contains either one animal or it's truly empty. And the area with the lost species appears to be empty, and we'll talk more about what that means later. Now at the bottom left here, you'll see all the different animals and you'll see what they're called, the lories, cuscus, toads, pythons, for example. Then you'll click continue, and it's going to tell you what to write into the research and conferences section. So you're going to take everything that this app says here, and you're going to write that in the research and conference for each of the letters. These are different each game, but these are the same for each player in each game. So for here, like A is toad, B is swamp. This tells you as we do researches, as we'll show you later, you'll learn about certain things like some of the animals themselves or some of the terrains like swamps and rainforests and stuff, and even things about the lost species. So everyone will write those down in their notepad. Now, if there were more than just you that was going to use this device, you could add a player to this device in the middle there. That will make sure that you can both use it without seeing secret things from the other player. Or if you're playing a solo game, you would click that at the bottom, but that's out of the scope of this video. Now, also, it tells you where to place your scientists. Like it says, place your scientists on space 7 of the map there at the top, and it shows them waving there. Now, if you click on that number, scientist there, it'll actually change the color, so you basically change it to what color you are. In this case, I'm red. Then you go ahead and you click Start Game. Now this is the main sort of screen you'll see on the app as you're playing. It's going to allow you to take the different actions. But now that we're set up, let's talk about what you're trying to do in the game and how you go about doing it. Now the object of the game is to be the one with the most points at the end, and you're going to be gaining points by confirming correct sightings of different animals. Each of those will be worth certain points. Being the first to do so will get you more points, and finding the lost species will get you points depending on if you're the first one to do it or not, because you don't have to be the first one. This is not necessarily a race. Even though you're trying to be the first one to do it, you can win the game without being the first person to find the lost species. The game is played over multiple turns, and the player whose turn it is the one whose scientist is the furthest back on the time track on the board. If players are tied like they are at the beginning of the game here, it's the one that's furthest back. It's going to be their turn. So on your turn, you're going to take one of these 5 actions that's right on your player shield. And these take a certain amount of time depending on which action you select. And again, time is how far you're going to move on that time track, because you might take one great big turn and other players might take little turns in between your next turn, or vice versa. So let's say in this case we want to survey by boat. Now it says you must start and move to and end only on the coast of the beach. You can move 4 to 6, you can double back, but you have to go at least 4 different areas, and then you're going to survey for 1 animal, and it's going to cost us 2 time. So let's say we started here again, we are going to move only on the coast, so you're only moving around the edges of where the water is, essentially like that. Now, if we went this way, like 1, 2, 3, 4, that's 4 different ones. It does not count the one we started in. It'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, because you have to go at least 4 different areas when you're moving in the boat, but you can move 4 to 6. Now I just mentioned you don't count the space you started in, and that's true unless you double back. So for example, I could go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Because I've entered in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different areas, that's okay because you have to do at least 4 different areas. Remember, the one you start in does not count. So on the app, I would select Survey by Boat. It shows you 2 times, so I click there, and again, it tells you exactly the same things that's on your player shield. Tap 4 to 6 adjacent coastal areas and 1 animal. So remember, I started in 7, so I'm gonna go to 8, so it highlights, then back to 7, it highlights, 6, 5, 4. Now, if I didn't want to do that, I could hit them again, and they would remove them. As you see, 5 and 4 just got removed. So there, I'm in at least 4 areas, and I'm going to select an animal. At the top of where the boat is, you'll see animals, and I can select different animals here. In this case, I'm going to select the couscous, and it's going to tell me. Now this says there are 2 couscous in areas 4 through 8. Now there it shows the 2 couscous, but then it says action 4-8C. That's shorthand for between spots 4 to 8, and I'm looking for couscous. The result was 2, so that is shorthand for that. Now I did use that shorthand here, 4-8C, result 2. Now it also shows you the shorthands here. Lorries is L, couscous is C, and things like that. Now what I do is I mark some stuff on here. You can make your own sort of note-taking things here, but I like to in this case say, hey, I linked all the ones where that there might be 2 of them with a letter A. For example, they're all linked together with the letter A, and there's 2 of them. So once I find 2 of these, I know the other ones, they can't be there. That's just my personal way of taking notes in these types of games, but you can use any way that you want to let you know that you have, from these areas here, from 4 through 8, you essentially have 2 couscous. So remember, that cost me 2 time, so I will move here, and you put yourself sort of in the edge, so when other people go here, they'll be in front of you. Remember, whoever is in the back goes first, so now who's ever last, in this case it's yellow, it'd be their turn. So now that you've seen an action and I did some things, let's talk now a little bit more about the different animal types that we are learning about to try to find a lost species. Now they all have different logic rules, and these are the same for everybody and for every game. Now for example, the lorries, this shows you this here. Now this is a lorry diamond because the lorries are always together and they always form a diamond, which is why you have this. Because as you're starting to look for things, you can be like, well, they may be here, they may be here, and you're going around and using this to help deduce things. Couscous, they are 1 or 2 areas from both other. So even though there's 3 of them, there's 4 lorries, 3 couscous, they're all within 1 or 2 areas of each other. So if I find that like the 2 couscous are right here, we know that the third one can't be more than 2 away from any of the other ones. So that helped with it. The toads, so there are actually 5 empty or truly empty areas, which means there's going to be nothing there. Each of the toads is adjacent to at least 2 truly empty areas. The python is not adjacent to a couscous. Now, the lost species itself, we'll talk a little bit about that later, because as you search for things and you see an empty space, it could either be truly empty or it could be where the lost species is. So let's say the other 2 players took turns. Now you're always going to write down what they did, and I'll show you why this is very important later. But let's say Greg did a survey by foot and he went to 1 and then 13 to 14 because they're all sort of adjacent to each other there. And he looked for lorries, L, so that's sort of the shorthand there. Stephanie put a camera trap, CT for camera trap, and then in space 10. Surveying by foot is similar to surveying by boat, but allows you to move across the island, which the survey by boat action does not allow you to do. And you can only move 1 to 3, and it takes 3 time because it takes longer on foot and you can double back. The camera trap, now it requires you to have your camera trap token, and you can move 1 to 3 and you can double back, and then you set this where your movement ends. So in this case, Stephanie ended on space 10 and she put her camera trap on the board. You only have one of these, so once it's out there, you can't do this again until it gets back to you, and we'll show you how that happens later. This is going to tell you exactly what's in that spot, but it might appear empty. And if it appears empty, it's either truly empty or the lost species might be there. You've got to figure that out. Now this is how the time track might look. I'm the furthest back, so I'm the one that gets to go right now. So let's say we want to try and narrow down these couscous some more. Maybe we wanted to lay a camera trap, maybe like right there, for example. Now remember, you move 1 to 3, but you can double back. So I might just go 1, 2, and then I'm going to place my camera trap here. Okay, so let's select camera trap on the app. Remember, it's going to cost us 4 time there on the right. We're going to select, remember camera trap, we're going to do it. We're going to go here, we're going to hit continue, and look at that. A couscous is in area 4. See, it says CT for action, CT4, and result is a couscous. So we know. Now remember, if that said it appears empty, that means it's either truly empty or the lost species is there. That's very important to grasp. So I know for a fact that the couscous is here. Now in each area there's only one item there. So in this case, it is a couscous, so I know that there's nothing else here, so I X those out. Now remember, I knew that there was between all of here 2 couscous, and we know that couscous has to be within 1 or 2 areas of both other, which means there couldn't be one more than 2 from here. 1, 2. So I know that this one and this one, they're not there. So I know that from here, there's either one here or here based upon my earlier deductions. Now that was great information, but it cost a lot of time. I was here and I had to go 1, 2, 3, 4. When you're moving forward, you never count the wood grain spots. That's only for the expedition leader. Now that the expedition leader is the furthest one back, we're going to activate and advance the expedition leader. Now, what we're going to do first is we're going to be able to make sightings. Now you can make 0, 1, or 2 sightings using your sightings. Remember, these are face down right now, but on the back side, there are animals there that you're going to say, hey, I'm making a sighting. I'm pretty sure that there's something here that is this animal. And so all players simultaneously are going to place 0, 1, or 2 of those tokens face down in front of themselves, and they're going to cover it like this so people don't know how many they're doing. You might be doing 0 and bluffing others. Once everyone has their hand like this, everyone can reveal. In this case, we're going to be placing 1, but some players may have been bluffing. Then players will be placing their tokens in the time track from back to front. So yellow is going to go first, then purple, then red. Again, only if they have one. And when it's their turn, they'll place all of them because they might be placing more than one. Now they can place it anywhere. They don't have to place it where their scientist currently is. So let's say this yellow player placed one here. We don't know what they placed there, but they did put it in 1. Now we now know that earlier this player here did in number 1, they did a search, they did a survey by foot, and they were looking for a lorry. Well, if they've placed a token there, either they're really trying to screw us up, which they probably wouldn't try to do, I'll tell you why in just a moment, but they likely have found a lorry there. So we might want to make a notation here of like maybe a question mark or something like that, and now we know, wow, if that's a lorry, then the other lorries either have to be here, or here, or here. Interesting. So I would normally make some marks here saying, hey, this is probably very probable that that's there. Now let's say that purple, they went ahead and placed one, and the purple player placed one in 10. That's why they did a camera trap. So since they placed something there, it's likely that it's not truly empty, because if it was, she probably wouldn't have put in a token there. So that might give us some information as well. And we are placing one here. Remember, you can place 0, 1, or 2, and you don't have to place them, even though this one happens to be where our scientist is, it doesn't have to be. Now, we're going to place these timing tokens. Now, this one here, it says 3. That's what we're going to be placing on here. So for the tokens that were placed this round, by the way, you can place where other players are placing this round. And earlier, and I'll talk about some caveats to that in just a moment. But so this one will get a time token of 3 because that's what we're placing this round. This one will also get a 3, and so will the other one. Now, it is possible that multiple players had placed here in the same round. Let's say for somehow purple knew that that was there. They would both go on top of each other because they are known, even though they're done, one was done actually before, it's still the same round, so it's considered the same time. Also note that this is not a final version of the game. The game will only have the 3, it won't have the little 1 because it gets a little confusing there, so the tokens might look a little bit different. And the first one that you'll be placing in the final board will actually be the number 1 token, not the number 3 token, but you always just place the one that is shown with the arrow down on it. Now a couple more things about the sighting tokens. You cannot move that token to a different area once it's placed, and if you run out of sighting tokens for a specific animal, you cannot report any more sightings of that animal. You cannot place 2 of the same animal sighting tokens in the same area, but you can put different ones. You do that if maybe later you confirm that the one you put earlier was incorrect and you still want to get some points. And you can always pick up and secretly look at your own sighting tokens on the board at any time. Just don't show anybody else. So you might be saying, why am I making these sightings? Because if they're shown to be correct, which we'll show you in just a bit when those get revealed, you're going to be getting points for every one of these at the end of the game. So if my couscous is correct, which I know it is, it's going to get me 3 points. Plus, if I was the first one to say so, I'll get an additional point. So you're going to be learning things from other players, but they're incentivized to do so because it's the only way they're going to score points. Then you would see if there's any time 1 tokens on there, and you would see if you would confirm sightings. Now it's the beginning of the game, so there aren't going to be any tokens out there. But you know that these are times 3, so those will get revealed when the expedition leader leaves this spot. First, we're going to be placing new sightings with the number 5, and then all the 3s are going to get revealed, and we'll find out if players are right or wrong. Now we'll go over how that works in just a moment, but once you finish this expedition leader is going to go to the next wood grain space. Sometimes there'll be certain things on there, like this says, hey, everyone gets to retrieve their town token. This is an action I have not yet gone over yet, so let's go over it right now. Now let's say I want to visit a town, and as shown on your board, you can move 1 to 3, and you must end in a town. Now remember, these mountains, they block adjacency. So when moving, I can't go through the mountain, I have to go around it, but luckily I can go 1, 2, and the third movement brings us into the town, and I'll place a town token there, and I won't get this back until the expedition leader leaves a space with that town token on it. And since I went to a town, I now get to take one of these cards. Now this is cool. This is like, hey birders, at the end of the game, for every confirmed sighting I have of the lorries, I'll get an additional point. Or, and this is an end game, maybe it's an ongoing. Every time I take a move by foot, search by foot, I get it only costs me 2 times instead of 3 for the rest of the game. Or 1 time I can use this to discard it and place my camera trap in a swamp, but only cost me 2 times instead of 4. Or here is something that would activate immediately. I would get to make I would basically be able to make a sighting right now and then discard it. Now when you take a card, let's say I take this one, then it immediately gets replaced like this. Now to see what all of these icons do, the last page of the rulebook talks about all the details of each of these cards that you can refer to. Now when you visit the town in the app, it's going to ask you, well, which research do you want to do? And it's all of them there. So maybe I want to say couscous because that's sort of what I'm working on. So I would select that one in the app and it would give me some information. And it told me that 2 couscous are adjacent to a mountain. Now you can use, I use sort of a little bit of shorthand to show you how you could work, or you could write it out either. You could put it in this other notes section. I like to just keep writing it across, but you can do whatever's good for your note taking. So 2 couscous are adjacent to a mountain. At some point during the game, the expedition leader pawn might be leaving one of these. This is a conference and its number is 1. And at this point, only 1 player has to do this and they can read it aloud to everyone. They click Lost Species Conference and they'll select 1 or 2. In this case, it was 1, so we'll select 1, click View at the bottom right, and there you go. And so they will tell you something about the lost species. Everyone can write this down on their notepad. For example, owl does not have 2 or more animals total to the southeast. And make sure you look at the compass on the board from your vantage point. And so I'd write that in Conference 1. The lost species does not have 2 or more animals to the southeast. Now remember, there's a compass on the board for the reason we're facing this way, so it means in this way. So the lost species doesn't have 2 or more animals in this direction. So if the lost species was here, it could be here because there couldn't even be 2 animals here. But if it was here and there were 2 animals here, it couldn't be here because of here. Now, depending on which way you're facing the board, it'll be a little bit different, but you're always following your orientation of the board showing southeast. So let's say we got to this point and players, if they wanted to, we already went through. If they wanted to create sightings for 5, let's say nobody did, but now we're going to look and confirm sightings that are at time 3. If there's more than 1 3-time token on the board, you go in sequential order. So we'll start with number 1 here. So this was time 3. So what you'll do is only 1 person has to do this, is they will select confirm sightings on the app. They will, in this case, there's only 1 token, so they'll take this and they will flip it up. And so that is a lorry. So on the app, they selected confirm sightings, and they're going to tap an area and an animal. So we're in area 1, so we'll tap that, and then we'll tap the lorry and the animal. So we'll hit continue. It says correct. Area 1 has a lorry. All players who were first to report this should mark this on their notepads. And obviously you can't place a sighting token anywhere that it's already been confirmed that you know what's there. Now the person that got it correct, and they were the first one to do it, where you circle here the area. So they would circle 1 because that's going to get them an additional point. This is actually my notepad, but the person who got it correct first will get it there. If multiple people were under the same time token, meaning they got there in the same round and they both were correct, they all would circle that and get those extra points at the end. Now if there were multiple tokens here, you would flip one of them up and do it. If it's incorrect, you would only then flip up the next token at this time and you'd do the same thing. If it's incorrect, then then we don't flip anything else, only the tokens for this time period. However, anytime anyone is incorrect, as a penalty, they must move their token 1 space on the time track, and they lose the incorrect sighting token back to the box and cannot place it again on the board later, which is why players won't just place tokens to throw other people off. Now again, in this case it was correct, but let's say there was a second token there. Well, now that it was correct, we get to flip all of the tokens. So this one would get flipped, and again, if it was correct, they were at the same time, so they would also get that bonus, circle that area 1 on their sheet. They'll get a bonus point at the end of the game. If they were incorrect, they would just move on the time track and these would get removed. But since it was correct, we would flip these. And so first of all, we look at this red one here, and it is correct. Okay, so it will stay there, and they'll be getting some points into the game. The purple one is not correct. So in this case, they would move up 1 in the time track for a penalty, and they would lose this back to the box and would not be able to place it again for the rest of the game. And even though that red player will get points at the end of the game for that, since they were not the first ones there, which was the yellow and purple for being there earlier at time 3, those ones will get the bonus points. The red one will not because they weren't there first, or at least tied for first. So at the end of the game, that's going to get me 2 points, but it's not going to get me the bonus single point for being the first one there. And at the end of this, you'll remove the timing tokens, assuming it was all correct. If not, you would leave the ones that are for future times. You would repeat this process for every single area that has a timing token that is supposed to be flipped and confirmed at this time. So for example, everyone would have found out that there is a couscous there, and maybe we found out that there was a python from the camera trap that they had sighted. And just to remind you, there's only one python, so once you found it, you know it's not going to be anywhere else. Now the last action I haven't talked about is locating the lost species, and as you can see it's going to cost 5 times. So if I select that, now when you locate the lost species, it reminds you of the species for this game, which is the owl's not directly across a mountain from any lorry. Now we know there's a lorry here because it was confirmed, and this is a mountain. It can't be across a mountain, meaning it cannot be there, just from the rule that the owl cannot be there. And remember when it says adjacent is always anything that it touches, but remember adjacency is blocked by any mountains. So let's show you this in the app. You're going to select an area. So here I have area 9. See the question mark? If I hit it, I unselect it. I'm going to select it in area 9, and I hit continue. Then you're going to locate 2 adjacent areas and say what's in them. Now keep in mind that 16 is not adjacent because it has the mountain shown by that red mountain. So let's say I'm going to select the 10, it highlights, and I'm going to select the species, python. It kind of puts it there and it highlights it. I'm going to say continue. Then I need to select another adjacent area. So I'm going to select 8, and let's say I think it's a toad, and I'm going to hit continue. This is going to be wrong, by the way. And it's going to, hey, confirm. You think that there's a python there, a toad there, and a lost species there. It says, nope, you did not find it. You're going to go 5 times. However, if I did get it correct, it said you found it. Now you do not announce where you found it. So it's very important not to say where it is to anyone else. And assuming that you're the first player to do this, which we are, that's what I would say, you'd still advance 5 on the time track. Now that will trigger the end of the game, and all other players don't take a turn as normal, but they will see how far back they are on the time. If they are between 1 and 5, they can either look for the lost species for a certain amount of points, or they can report a certain amount of sightings to try to gain points that way. And again, that's how many time spaces they are back. Remember, do not count the wood grain time. Meaning, 2, this player is 2 away, and this player is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 away, if that makes sense. Now, once each player has finished those final turns, remember you're always doing that from furthest back in the time order as normal. Once that's completed, you can click End Game and Reveal All at the bottom left of the app. Anyone says, hey, are you sure you want to do this? You click Reveal All. It'll show you the solution to the puzzle. And then essentially you're going to go with any of the sightings that are still on the board that have not been confirmed or not. You're going to go through confirming those or not. If they are not correct, they get removed from the board. There's no penalty at this time. If they are correct, they will get points for those at the end, and I'll show you now, but they also still get the first time bonus if they are the first person to have a sighting in that area as normal. Then everyone will score on their own. For example, I have 3 circles here, which means I was the first, or at least tied for the first, to have the correct sighting there. So I got 3 of those. Each of those are a point, so it's 3. I had 2 confirmed lorry sightings. They're each worth 2 points, so I have 4. I had 3 confirmed couscous sightings. They're each worth 3 points, so I have a total of 9. I was the first one to find the lost species, so I got 12. This shows you how many you'd get if you were 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 spaces behind on the time track. So if someone was 5 spaces behind you, they would also have gotten the same 12 for being first, but the closer they are, the less points they get. You might get points from certain town cards. This one says I got an additional point for each confirmed sighting of the couscous, so 3 there for a total of 31. Whoever has the most points is the winner. If there's a tie, the one who scored the most points for locating the lost species is the winner. If it's still tied, the one for who has the most leader bonuses, that's these things here, would win. And if it's tied, you rejoice in the shared victory. Now, I'm not going to cover the solo game here, but it does feel like a 2-player game, and it's very competitive. And you can see the solo section of the rules to explore that on your own. Well, I hope this helped you dive right into the search for lost species faster than you normally would if you had to read the rulebook yourself. Now, if you have further questions about the rules, I've placed a link below me in the description of this video, and that's the best place to ask them since I'll be notified, but so will Renegade Game Studios.